You need to be a great student to get both the melody and the numbers to pitch, to make the case to your C-suite to do this work in great depth. You gotta be well educated, not just passionate. The passion alone won't work. You gotta have the numbers.
Hi, I'm Rachel Kraus.
And I'm Caryl Stern.
And we are here to explore and unpack the essence, architecture, and DNA of purpose across industries, professions, relationships, and even within paradox.
So on this podcast, we're going to unlock the stories and the journeys of our guests. We're hoping to unlock pathways to grow, to gain, and to give. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to Listen on Purpose. I'm Caryl Stern, and alongside my phenomenal co-host, Rachel Kraus. And today, we have the pleasure of speaking to a woman I have long admired, Caryl Cohn, founder of Caryl Cohn On Purpose, and a renowned leader in the world of corporate social responsibility, purpose-driven business. She's also the host of Purpose 360 podcast, showcasing the most innovative leaders in social purpose. And we are excited to spend some time with Caryl today and really listen to her insights on how business can leverage purpose to create some really meaningful impact. So welcome, Caryl. Great to have you. Excited you're here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Caryl, and also great to meet you, Rachel. Caryl and I are friends for a long time. So she is one of my heroes.
Too long.
You're a hero to me, Caryl Stern. You always have been. So.
Well, we bonded. Caryl, we're already friends because we have a mutual admiration. Yes.
Of course.
Terrific. So I know this past year has been a big year for you. You've won some amazing recognitions, the Lifetime Achievement for Purpose from PR Week, a Barbara Hunter Trailblazer Award from New York PRSA. But I've known you for so many years. So let's take the listener back. Start at the beginning. We want to understand how you got where you got. And so a little bit about your journey. But, this is always a tough question for people, because they don't want to sound boastful or egotistical. I'm telling you, be boastful. I want to hear your successes. I want to hear your accolades. And then also tell us about the challenges.
Thank you, Caryl, for asking that question. So I started linking companies and social issues in 1983. And I wasn't that old. I started really young. But kidding aside, is that there were very few leaders at the time, people in marketing or in leading companies, that truly thought that they could embrace a social issue to advance their business goals and such. And one day, Bruce Cates, who was the CEO of the Rockport Shoe Company, showed up at my in my office. I was in Boston. We had, it was myself and 3 other people. And he said, I want to build my company in a very different way. And AKA, I think he was saying, well, I don't really have a lot of money, and there were only $25 million. And for those of you who don't know Rockport's beginnings, Bruce's brilliance was he took a Nike inner and he put it in a street shoe outer. And it truly was great for walking to work, walking on a trail, walking at a trade show. But nobody was talking about walking. People were, if they were walking, they were like, 90 years old and kind of, walking around the corner slowly. I said, okay, great. It was a big client, and, we were only like a few years old. And so we tried to do traditional marketing, taking his shoes to editors and such, and they went, no, they were just not attractive. So it took a long time to figure out what was the essence of that brand. What was the truth in that product? And Bruce was very different. We went to trade shows, and he had these beautiful pictures of people walking in a field or walking in a city and such. And that gave me kind of a lead. Could we stand for something much bigger? So all that was happening with me, this is my intuition about, I am great about connection making. And so he gave me the clue. Here's a product which has great features. Here's some pictures about walking. So I did some research. Is anybody truly advancing the practice of walking? And no, it wasn't. Walking was old, and walking needed a wholly new rebrand. It needed to be fresh. It needed to be young. It needed to be measured. It needed to be health related. And that's what we did. And we had a fellow who walked around the country, and he talked to kids. He walked 11,208 miles, and it was Rob Sweetgall. He went into middle schools and he said, eat properly, don't smoke and walk. Very, very simple. And he was like the Pied Piper of walking. And then we added the twist to it, which was we had a doctor from the University of Massachusetts Medical Center who truly studied him as a health study. And we flew Rob Sweetgall back to Boston 8 times, and he was studied in his health parameters, and then he would fly back to where he had left off, and he would continue walking. And, we had to romance this thing because nobody believed that walking could be great for you. And so when we finished, we had a book, we had a film, we had a proclamation from the Health and Human Services, and we began to create momentum and to truly add real content and context to walking. And it wasn't about Rockport. Rockport led with the issue of walking. And then they would then get the accolades because they were the catalyst for this. And so they started 25 million. They ended up, this just was gangbusters. Once we finished the walk, we did a walking institute, we did a walking test. The walking test was launched on Good Morning America. We had, over 100,000 handwritten requests for information. This was pre-internet. And then we started doing more science, and we owned the content. And so we had cover stories, Wall Street Journal, U.S. News and World Report, on and on and on. And Rockport then went into a retailer and said, there's a whole new category of shoes called walking shoes. Walking shoes became $1 billion new category at retail. Rockport had a book that we'd give away as a gift with purchase when you bought the shoes. And they owned the whole category. And it was amazing. It was just my intuition that they needed to stand for something that was honest and true and constantly add to the information. So that was the beginning of all of this. And then Reebok, unfortunately, bought Rockport. So Paul, we did such good work that Paul Fireman said, I want to do that because they were becoming ubiquitous. And it was, one of those amazing days where it was a snowy day. I wasn't feeling well. He said, come down to Canton. I want to talk to you. And he had us and their ad agency, TBWA, brilliant ad agency. And Paul said, I want to do something. We're losing our edge. We need to get to young people. So he leaned over and he said to TBW, well, what's your thinking? Well, we're going to recreate this incredible, prisoners of conscience in a stadium, and we're going to have Sting and Peter Gabriel, on the stage because it was the 40th anniversary, the Declaration of Human Rights. And so, because we were thinking about human rights could be something that we identified that young people were very concerned about. And this is late 80s. And so then Paul said, well, Caryl, what do you think? And basically, we said, well, let us, think about it. And so we went back to that firm, and we came up with an idea that had to be very authentic. Authentic was always part of my blood, the red corpuscles in my body about doing this work. And we basically did some research. We found out there was never, ever a recognition for young people under the age of 30 doing human rights work, ever. It was always the people who had died or people who are really old. And so we went to Paul and we said, we want to have something that's going to have a long tail, not just the music tour, but something that Reebok, because here is the kicker. Amnesty International would not call it the Reebok anything. It was the Amnesty World Tour. And so, you get this little teeny tiny Reebok down in the corner. You couldn't see it. So we needed to come up with something that was totally authentic, that Sting and Peter Gabriel and Bruce Springsteen would go, yes, it's not just slapping on a brand. It's somebody that's truly advancing a cause. And so we created the Reebok Human Rights Awards. And we had Senator Ted Kennedy, and we had all these amazing people on our board because we truly were going to find young people under the age of 30, 2 in the U.S., 2 globally, that were truly needed a light shown on them to really enhance their work. And so then Reebok did it. Then Avon heard about us, and then we worked with their CEO. All CEOs who had vision and passion and ambition to do more for their company, their brands, and society. And we created the Avon Breast Cancer Awareness Crusade. And, so again, working with CEOs, finding the essence of the brand, their assets. Avon had over 2 million associates that you could leverage. But what would you give them? And at the time, this is the 90s, people didn't talk about breast cancer. They didn't talk about breasts. And I remember when we launched it, and there was this amazing New York Times article with Verushka, who is, for those listening, she was one of the leading models at the time. And it was very kind of muted, and she had a mastectomy. And it was bringing breast cancer out of the darkness into the light. And, it wasn't about us. It wasn't about Avon, but Avon had a little piece in that very long feature story about what they were going to do to create awareness about breast cancer, about getting, breast self-exams, getting mammograms, etc. And then, they had a million ladies, mostly ladies, going out there and talking to their customers. I don't want to sell you something today. I want to talk about something that is likely very important to you. And they went from being transactional to transformational. So that was the beginning of all of this.
So let's fast forward a little. Obviously, in the past couple of years, we have seen a number of companies that formerly were quiet jump on the bandwagon on a number of issues. I have my own thoughts of what the catalyst moment was, but let me hear your thoughts. What happened? Why are companies jumping on, and is it sincere?
Okay. So the first thing I want to say is that for 10 years, we're doing this work and everybody thought we were crazy. And, while, yes, I was kind of the darling and giving media interviews, we needed research to prove the power. And so one of the things that I did, and this was a seminal shift, it was in 1993, and I partnered with Roper Starch Worldwide to do the first piece of comprehensive research about companies and social issues. And it was called the Cohn-Roper Report, and it was, okay, listen to this, a half an hour in-home interviews. It cost a fortune, but we worked it out with some pro bono work with Roper Starch. And we launched it in the New York Times with Stuart Elliott, and it was a huge article. And then all the business publications said, you can do what with a business? You can wrap yourself around a cause. And so that became the beginning of my love of research in addition to doing the work. So every 2 years we did a new piece of research. So we've done 30 pieces of research, and then giving it out. And I talked to anybody who would listen, basically, whether it was big groups, little groups, or etc., sharing the research reports, because we needed to show that this was business strategy, that this wasn't about philanthropy, and ultimately is about tying and connecting with your employees first. So now let me get to your question. So I'm doing this, and then other firms, when the internet, so a couple of seminal moments, when the internet came along and companies became transparent, all of a sudden there was this, dare I say, oh shit moment, which is that we're making these claims, we're very female-oriented or health-oriented or such. Well, guess what? No, just because you gave money, made a donation, or did a walk, that is not a deep and authentic commitment. That is not part of your brand and your ethos and your values. So we kept giving, this research out there. The internet caused a seminal moment of need, but I would say that two things happened. When Larry Fink, in his declaration, started talking about purpose. Now, there are many names for this. And so for your listeners, way back in the day when I started, it was cause marketing. Then we named it cause branding in 1999. Then it was called triple bottom line and CSR and corporate responsibility, corporate citizenship, lots of names. So in, mid, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, the name purpose started coming up. And purpose means something different, by the way. It means what an organization stands for at its highest level, beyond just making a profit. How is it engaging with humanity? How is it engaging with the environment and such? And so we call it purpose. But Larry Fink, again, his $1 trillion BlackRock, he's leading it, etc. And he said, no company is going to be successful. This was about 19, unless they understand their purpose. Because the purpose is a gold thread. It aligns. It is about value creation in the organization beyond a product or a service. So Larry Fink, I would say you got to give him a ton of credit. Then you have the Business Roundtable, and that is the trade association for CEOs. It's about 210 CEOs, leaders in this country. And the Business Roundtable wrote in 2018 the declaration that we are about all stakeholders, not just shareholders. So those were two significant business points in time that all of a sudden took purpose, or whatever you call it, and made it embedded into corporate, the top, 3 or 4 things a CEO and C-suite needed to focus on and then deliver. Now, there's a big schism between stated purpose and activated purpose.
So, Caryl, I know we fast forwarded a little bit, and I actually want to see if we can rewind again. Also,
sure.
Pre Rockport, you mentioned intuition, that that idea of finding essence and being able to kind of hone in on what we later called purpose or redefined as purpose, but really early on. Are there parts of your upbringing or just what helped influence that in you? Was that innate? Was that developed? Was that calibrated? Talk to us about where that comes from for you.
Sure. Thank you, Rachel, for that question. One of my favorite interview questions and I'm going to give it to everyone listening to your podcast, because there's 2 really great questions. So what's the most important thing you learned from your mother? And what's the most important thing you learned from your father? Because the apple usually does not fall really far from the tree. So I grew up, my parents were very liberal. They were artists oriented. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. So we're watching the Vietnam War every night on television. Remember, there were only 3 channels, guys, in those days. So you're watching the horrors of the Vietnam War. Then you're seeing the horrors of the civil rights movement. And then I go to an activist university, Brandeis University. And there was something historically called the Year of the Student Strike. And students basically decided that they were going to take over buildings. And basically I say, yes, I took over buildings. Yes, I marched on Washington. I didn't burn any buildings. But I was very much just part of that whole activist environment at Brandeis. And especially, we had a lot of, Brandeis was created because Jews were not given the opportunity for higher level education at the time. And a lot of anti-Semitism then, as there is tremendous now. And also blacks, underrepresented blacks were not given a place to go. So Brandeis was very liberal on both counts. And so that's what truly impacted me. But it was, and I wasn't hardcore radical, but, it's like the apple didn't fall far from the tree. My mother's very creative. She was a 3rd generation entrepreneur. She had the first off-Broadway theater. So all of these things came together, and I wanted to trial, when I started my company way back when I was very young, to just do something better and different. And part of it, I was in Boston. The other thing is that I'm a New Yorker by breeding. So I am aggressive and excited, and you can see, and passionate. And Boston's very, very reserved. And so I created this firm in Boston that was very, whoa, who is this person? What is she doing? What is this thing called cause marketing, cause branding during those years?
I guess part of first of all, I love your story, and God, you're a New Yorker. Who knew? So, I think that, and I love the 2 questions. I often talk about the influence of my mother in particular, but both of my parents on who I am and what I've become. And I'd like to believe I've had influence on my own children. As I started to ask you, before we jump backwards a little, there's been a change. There's been a change in the expectations of the public for what corporate leaders, never mind the corporation themselves, expectations of where they stand on political issues, where they stand on social problems. What do you see as what drove that change?
What drove that change? Well, I'll go back to the internet. The transparency of information, 1. 2, young people, especially now Gen Z, and younger, they have different expectations because they have agency with their wallet, they have agency with their voice, and they have agency where they're going to work. And there was this shift. I hope that some of my work and research and programs did help to create the shift. But I did a little bit of kind of historical review of other organizations, because a movement, I've been credited with creating the walking movement and the early childhood education movement and the cause movement, the breast cancer movement. A movement doesn't happen by just me alone. It happens by others jumping in. So Avon and Komen, that's what created the breast cancer movement. And we were just one prong of that. But here's a really interesting historical thing. Net Impact, which came out of Business for Social Responsibility, was the association on college campuses for students who believed in more for business. That was founded in 1993. BSR, Business for Social Responsibility, and I was one of the founding members, 92. Let's just see some others. Fortune Most Admired list, which had 8, I always want, my God, there was one little teeny tiny area that was social responsibility of the 8 elements. 1997. But Fortune then changed the world list 2015. So things were changing. Just 100, which I adore, Just Capital. And, that's an organization that truly, they've done hundreds of thousands of interviews with people like us. What do you expect in a just business? How they treat their employees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the environment, society, salaries, etc. They were formed in 2014. And the committee and CECP, which was founded by Paul Newman in 1999, and John Whitehead from Goldman. So you had a celebrity, a philanthropist, and a financier. They, for 20 years, and I was always, from the minute I heard about them, I was on their doorstep. And I was a judge for them, and I spoke at their conferences, and I just loved them. In 2019, on their 20th anniversary, they changed their name, CCP, to Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose. From the committee, okay, so the CCP originally was Committee to Invest in Corporate Philanthropy. So from philanthropy to purpose over 20 years. I show you that, and it's just fascinating to see those organizations had an influence on business, as Larry Fink, as the Business Roundtable and such. And then in our society, you look at what's happening in climate, and you cannot miss it no matter where, whether it's a forest fire or tornado, whether it's floods and such, hurricanes, whatever, you can't miss that. And then you look at what happened with George Floyd. Yeah, so the other unlock was truly social media. And, the internet and then social media, because everybody had a megaphone. And so the influence and impact on CEOs, and then you have a new generation of CEOs as well. And you have them, they're a little bit younger, they're the next gen, they have children who are asking them at the dinner table, hey dad, hey mom, what are you doing about this? You're also getting more diversity and more women who are more empathetic, and they realize that you can't, and also it's the loss of command and control. That's the other thing that happened, that a CEO cannot just, I expect this and you will do it. Well, guess what? Your employees are saying, no. If you want the best and brightest, especially in technology, right? They can go anywhere now, and especially now in a hybrid world, work world. So all of those things are a confluence of change. And I didn't even answer about the tough issues yet, because that's a whole nother issue. But CEOs on their plate, and part of it also was our research. We did the B2B Purpose Paradox in 2020. We did Purpose Under Pressure. I suggest any of your listeners go to our website. All of that is free and available to see the demands of young people. And I will tell you that in our Purpose Under Pressure, which was done right after COVID, because we wanted to see how employees felt, that 91% said, gosh, I feel safer because my company has a clear purpose, because the world out there is scary. And then 86% said, our purpose gives us well executed and authentic, and we can get into that. Our purpose gives me belonging and meaning. Because you know what? Nobody gets up in the morning and says, hey, I want to make money for the CEO. Isn't that exciting? Maybe the CFO says that. Maybe the business leaders, but everybody else goes, well, shit, if I'm going to give you my time, especially after COVID, and I'm now going back to work and I'm leaving my kids and my dogs and my kitty cats and whatever, this better make sense. It better give me psychic rewards.
All right. So given all of
Right.
that, though, then why do you think there are some companies that aren't opting in? Like, why are some companies not addressing CSR at all?
I think they're in the minority. I think that they have to, by certain laws, there's certain employee regulations that they have to fulfill. I think that command and control and just making a profit, you're not going to win. You know, you may win in the short term. You may have an incredibly amazing product that the world has to have. You know, Apple or Nvidia. But CEOs get it. And if they only get it about recruiting and retaining the best, that's okay. Because if they don't have the best talent, they will not win in the marketplace. And so any company that is truly only about the profits, they're not going to win. They're not going to win.
So you mentioned also authentic, belonging, and meaning. And those are words that are certainly pervasive in people's personal lives, professional lives. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Merriam-Webster. About a couple weeks ago, their word of the year. God, the year before was gaslighting, so I don't know about that. But this year, it was authentic.
We're improving.
And, yeah, thank God. And so, not COVID. So, you know, I saw it in my newsfeed right early in the morning. And the funniest thing is that I went to ChatGPT and I said, okay, write me a blog about it. And she actually wrote a pretty good blog, but I said, well, I can't use ChatGPT. So we actually had to, you know, we went back and wrote it. And so just ran in sustainable brands, and I can give it to you as a link. You know, yeah, authentic is, you know, I've been talking about authenticity for a long time, because when you find your purpose, I always say it can't be laminated. It can't be on a wall as a plaque. It must be lived. And the challenge now is, how do you bring it to life? And how do you bring it to life and not marginalize it? And the very sad thing that's happening right now in DE&I is that the pledges that were made, about 82% of companies in the U.S. made a pledge about becoming more diverse and such, that a year ago, when there was analysis of are those pledges being fulfilled, most weren't. And then now that we have the tech layoffs and we have some right sizing of organizations that hired too much during COVID, DE&I leaders are being quietly let go. And so that's a very disturbing situation that's happening right now, because you serve a diverse audience. As a country, we will be more, dare I say, Caucasians will be less than 50% of our population. And companies that want to have the greatest thinking, that they want to have the sensitivity and products and services that appeal to who is in the population, they've got to be diverse. So interesting challenges right now.
You know, one of the things that we're looking at LionTree, and, you know, and obviously it's kind of the mantra of my job, is the intersection of purpose and profit. You know, historically, philanthropy has sat here and profit has sat here. So corporations, you know, and it speaks to what you said happened with DE&I, you know, great foundation gifts and pledges, but not tied to the product and not tied to the business imperatives, with some exceptions. You know, you have like Verizon, who their 5-year strategy, there is a whole thing on its impact on society, et cetera. So we are really examining that, and not necessarily in the vein of impact investing, but true investing, you know, true products that are solving social problems. Do you see that as a route? Do you see that as the right way to be going?
Well, I think if you're going to have sustained and deep commitment to purpose, you have got to embed it into your business strategy. We talked about employees ad nauseum, and you want the best and the brightest. So it's got to be for recruit. You'd be amazed. When we were working with ConAgra in the late 90s, you know, young people started coming into HR saying, what do you stand for? That was like really early. Now it's like the first or second question. And, and how can I get involved? Part of it is innovation, to your point, and tying into whether it's supply chain and sourcing, whether it's new products and services. I'll give you a great example. Timberland and has made an investment in Haiti, and to bring cotton farming back to Haiti because it was wiped out. And they worked with the government and they worked with NGOs and such, and they taught smallholder farmers how to farm cotton. And then Timberland took the cotton as product, as material to make some of their products. And then they would sell the products. And of course, they would communicate that these products were made of that. So it was a virtuous circle of they've innovated something that was needed, that was true to their product line and the ethos of the Timberland brand. So that is just one great example. But I love that one.
No, it's a great example. I know I've spent some time recently looking at the hospitality industry and its adaptation to enabling people with disabilities to be participative in travel. And some of the products and services, and especially in the technology areas that are coming out, are phenomenal. I mean, I think they're going to be hugely successful investments.
Yep. Can I give you another example, which was one that is coming out of Tapestry, and Tapestry owns Coach, among other, Stuart Weitzman and others. So Coach is a very young brand. And so to the brilliance of Coach and Tapestry, they decided to do circular economy and to create products of recycled leather that they would get back. But here's what they did, and this is brilliant. They created a committee of Gen Zers. They put out the words on the internet, the word, and said, hey, join us in, what's the product that we need? How might we talk about it, etc. And they created this thing called Coachtopia. And it is a brilliant way, and it's they took all these young people to bring, what does circularity look like? What are the types of products and services? What's the language? What's the ethos? And it is absolutely brilliant. The line is sold out twice already, and it connects Coach, takes them to the next generation. It takes what would have been discarded ends of leather and et cetera, and also how they design it and how they manufacture it. So the least amount of excess and the most amount of circularity. It's brilliant.
It is brilliant. I really like it.
I love it.
I like it a lot. And I guess that speaks to the investor who's listening. What's the question they ought to be asking?
The question
with regard to
this?
They
should ask, does my purpose and embedding it create value? Is it value creation? How is it getting me better supply? First of all, there's risk mitigation. It's like, if we're chocolate and we love Tony's Chocolonely, right? We are sourcing our chocolate from child labor-free resources. And we can tell a wonderful story about how we're investing in those smallholder farmers. Again, they probably don't remember this, but the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, part of the genesis was when orangutans, people dressed up as orangutans, were climbing the fence at Unilever. And this is before Paul Pullman got there. But it was like it went around the globe in terms of attacking Unilever. You're cutting down the rainforest, and that's the home for these orangutans. And that was way before Paul Pullman said, I'm going to reinvent this company to be about helping people understand how to live sustainably. Amazing background. So, what do you say to investors? There's a lot of proof. There's a lot of data, not just ours, whether it's from Just Capital, whether it's from CCP, whether it's from others, that say companies that are better run, that manage their risk better, have better results. And so, but there's the challenge that we all have is the quarterly pounding of earnings on Wall Street. And, look, Paul Pullman, and we love Paul Pullman. He's got the B team and all the things he's doing now. He said early on, he said to Wall Street, and the street, if you don't like my earnings or what's happening, don't follow me. Don't buy me. Now, that's very, very courageous.
It's gutsy,
it's
right?
Very gutsy. So I think that most people aren't like Paul Pullman. He is my hero. I've had
Mine too.
for 360. I adore the man. His book is great, net positive. Everybody read his book. Um, so I think that the world of business is shifting so dramatically, and command and control doesn't work, and you need the innovation to own your category. So for all of these reasons, being purposeful and embedding it, especially with Gen Zers, is going to, and then, being strategic. We're not about writing checks. We're about investing in the future.
I actually, it's interesting because you touched at the top of the podcast, you touched on the idea of inside outside. You talked about Nike kind of on the inside and walking shoe on the outside, and almost like as a metaphor, how that sets up the way this industry is evolving and investing in the future. So I think about, like, just because you touched on it, there's like such a beautiful visualization of kind of what the inner work looks like in terms of establishing purpose, permeating that throughout the culture. Gen Z, you mentioned, like having a sense of meaning, belonging, and then how that then is represented in the outside. So like you just mentioned that, so I was thinking about kind of the symbolism and the metaphor about how the top of your career really established almost the trajectory of how this can continue to impact the world moving forward.
I wanted to, Caryl, to your point, I want to just make another story, a case about Wall Street and impact. Aflac came to us in 2017. And they said, we have this incredible Aflac doc. Aflac, he's worth billions on the balance sheet. But what does he, he's very funny, but what else does he do? They also quietly gave over 135 million to pediatric cancer. Especially, they created a cancer center in Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. My superpower is connection making, and so I was having lunch with one of my Purpose Collaborative partners, which is a group of 45 agencies we brought together that have purpose at the center, so we can expand and contract and create dream teams for our clients. And I was talking to Aaron, and Aaron makes social robots for kids with diseases. And he said, well, here's what we're doing with Jerry the Bear, et cetera, et cetera. And he turned to me and said, Caryl, what's going on with you? And I went, we're going to start working with Aflac. And in 1 second, my superpower kicks in and boom, over the top of my head, a social robot collides with the Aflac duck. Boom, over my head. Stars, stripes, whatever, over my head. Confetti. You couldn't see it, but I could. And basically, I turned to Aaron. He goes, what's wrong? What's wrong? You look did you get scared? I know. And I smiled. I said, we're going to create a social robot for Aflac. And we did. And using Aaron's incredible background, we studied kids and their needs. Kids go through 1,000 days of treatments who are going through pediatric cancer. It is really dreadful and horrible for them. They lose all their agency. They're sick. They lose all their routines. And we studied them for about a year. Their doctors, their kids, their caregivers, so that we shaped this little social robot the way children wanted it. It was co-created. It gave them agency. And basically, they wanted something little, and they wanted something soft, and they wanted a duck that purred. Purred? Purr? Okay, fine. Cats, ducks, whatever. But we also gave it feelings. So it has 3 motors and patents pending and such, but inside it has an emoji you can put on its chest, because a 3, 5, 7-year-old child, when they revert to very young when they're being treated, and they cannot communicate. We wanted to use the duck to help them communicate and to feel that they had a comforting companion. So there are 7 emojis. You put the happy emoji on its chest and the duck goes quack, 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 quack. You put the sad emoji that's got a green emoji and it goes quack, quack, quack. And so we convinced, Aflac said we loved it. Their CEO said it's the best idea I ever heard. We introduced it at the Consumer Electronics Show. God, that's kind of weird. They're the best cars and phones and refrigerators. We introduced this little teeny tiny duck. It stole the show. It had 2 billion impressions about what it was. It tied beautifully to Aflac. We won Tech for a Better World going into that show. That's how we got the 2 billion impressions and such. But it also had an impact on, because we measured this, impact on employee pride, pre and post, through the roof. Impact on their reputation. Their rep track scores went up 3 points. Impact on potential purchasers of Aflac products. 15% of the national adult population knew about this based on media relations, not ads. And almost 100% said they would be open to buying an Aflac product. And their stock went up for a few points when this was just introduced. Now, the point is, they give him away, or her. They give him away to kids. It costs about $250 landed. But the kids, the hospitals have gone all across the country, also in Japan, which is where their major business actually is. But it had an impact on the business, their ethos, every single parameter in their business it had an impact on. Long story, but it's really, really important because the innovation that a purpose, when you bring it internally to innovation and employees, as well as your supply chain partners, you can do extraordinary things.
That's a great place, I think, to wrap us up. So as you know, we always end our podcast asking for a gift for our listeners. So what do you want to add to our swag bag?
Well, I would say that you need to be courageous and persistent when you are pitching, because you're probably not a CEO listening. You're probably in the organization or you're in your career and you truly want to do this work. So the first thing I'm going to say is that you need to show that this is strategic and powerful. So I would say read some books. Read Net Positive from Paul Pullman. Read Tomorrow's Capitalist from Alan Murray, the CEO of Fortune Media. Read, I think, At the Heart of Business by Hubert Joly, who turned around Best Buy from almost in bankruptcy to truly thriving incredibly. Read that podcast. Listen to my podcast. You need to be a great student to get both the melody and the numbers to pitch, to make the case to your C-suite to do this work in great depth. You gotta be well educated, not just passionate. The passion alone won't work. You gotta have the numbers, because this is about business strategy, brand strategy, ethos, values, behaviors, and such.
Great gift. I love it. Rachel, any last thoughts before we wrap?
That was amazingly uplifting. I love the idea of numbers and melody, right? That's how the conflation of both. But stay educated and, kind of turn passion.
And be courageous.
Be courageous
and relentless. Don't give up. This is the way business has to go forward.
Well, I think you have hit the mark on everything we hoped, Caryl. Not that I'm at all surprised. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for the gift. And thank you for the reading list. We're excited.
Well, great. I love what you're doing. I've always loved what you're doing. And you guys are doing an amazing job. It's many of our voices that will change the trajectory of business strategy and social impact.
Thanks so much for joining us. Listen on Purpose is a series as part of KindredCast from Kindred Media and Audiation, with the phenomenal music by Rachel's 10-year-old son, Noam Kraus.
If you like this episode, please make sure to subscribe to KindredCast wherever you get your podcasts and leave a review letting us know what you think. We are your hosts, Rachel Kraus
and Caryl Stern.
Thank you for listening.
And find your purpose.